Welcome to Filmcast Without a Cause. My name is Jacob Rosdale, and I'm here with my co-host, Pat Boberg. How's it going, Pat?
I prefer to be referred to as sidekick, Jacob, just for future reference.
Oh, you're not my sidekick. We are equals. Equals and full partners and etc., etc. Well, this is our podcast where we review new films, old films, and talk about future films. And let's start with the future part right now with development news. And oftentimes, development news turns into trend talk because Hollywood seems to, when they get on a kick with something, one announcement happens and then another and another. And we've talked before about books, video games, comic books, but I don't think we've ever talked about comic strips before, have we, Pat?
No, we haven't. And this is a sad tale of keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes. Just in the past week or so, I've counted 3 comic strip films, and this is different than comic books. Comic strips are what are in the newspapers, the Sunday funnies, if you will. Announcements for Heathcliff, Peanuts, and Family Circus movies are in development. Are you familiar? Of course, everybody knows Peanuts. That's
Charlie Brown,
Snoopy, and Charlie Brown and whatnot. I don't know if I'm too familiar with Heathcliff, other than that he's the other orange cat.
I remember watching that cartoon when I was a kid, but then I went and watched about the first 3 minutes of an episode on YouTube, and I do not remember that at all, other than the fact that it was annoying, and it still is it does not seem like it's going to, I don't know, but it does not look like it's going to be a good movie.
Well, there have been comic strip film. I'm not even going to talk about Family Circus. If anyone knows me very well, maybe you don't have to know me very well. If it's come up in conversation before with me, you know, I hate the Family Circus. I think and I'm not alone in that opinion, that it's one of the worst, least funny comic strips of all time. But so I'm not. Unless you have an opposite opinion of that, we're not going to dwell on the Family Circus any longer.
Well, I just say that this seems like it's a little late to the game. When they have made it years ago, and Yours, Mine, and Ours, and Cheaper by the Dozen came out. That's films?
Actually, that's would have been a good trend. The large family. I don't know how big the Family Circus is. I think they only have 3 or 4 kids.
Oh, okay. Just for those people who don't follow it, it just seems like they have a billion annoying kids.
They might have a billion annoying kids. At least one, Jeffy, I believe, likes to run in little paths, and as a kid I used to like that strip when you could like follow his path, and he'd always get in a little mischief, but as an adult I find it really, really grating. But as I said, that's the last we'll talk about Family Circus. I don't know what a movie for Family Circus would be. It certainly won't be the first comic strip movies. Obviously we've gotten Garfield before, twice, Dennis the Menace, Marmaduke, and even talking about older strips, Dick Tracy, of course, and Blondie. I don't know if you're familiar with the Blondie strip. I used to call it Dagwood because I liked Dagwood better than Blondie.
They made a movie on Blondie?
Like in the 40s. Like there was a whole series of Blondie Dagwood films.
Oh, okay.
That I only know because I went on Wikipedia today just to like make sure I wasn't forgetting any major ones. But do you think there's any potential for any of these movies to be good?
I would say the only one that has potential would be Peanuts, but I know some like serious fans of Peanuts that are just upset and hate the idea that they try and do this because Charles Schultz is, in some circles, almost Dr. Seuss for his, creation.
And they've certainly adapted enough Dr. Seuss to make that no longer a taboo subject.
Yeah, so,
I like Peanuts as well. I worry because the strip has such a distinct type of humor that's not modern at all. I'm worried that they will try and hip it up.
Well, maybe they'll go Brady Bunch movie with it and make it just over the top, camp.
I think that sounds even worse, but who knows? Do you have a favorite comic strip? What would you like to see made into a movie? If any strip in the world could sustain a movie, what would you say it would be?
Oh, sustain a movie. That's really hard because the comic strips I was a fan of were, just single scenes like Bizarro and Far Side. I own, between my brother and I, every Far Side book that ever came out and calendar.
Oh, wow.
But I'd say the only comic strip that has a story going in it that I actually read is Zitz. And when I was a kid, my parents would be like, oh, that's Patrick, 15-year-old kid. But now I'm a 30-year-old kid, and it doesn't really apply, but it's still pretty funny.
I don't know if it is a medium that is good for film because it's mainly like a joke told in 4 images. Mm-hmm. There are rarely a story. Sometimes they have an arc that run a week. But I like Zitz, too. Well, I was thinking maybe
if they were going to make a movie, it seems like the only one that has any weight would be Doonesbury, but I don't want to see that movie.
I don't want to see it. What was the one with the penguin?
I don't remember.
Oh gosh, okay. We'll be corrected. I guess if you're gonna make a comic strip movie, I think the way they've been doing it is I mean, they're not any good, but you just take the character, who is preferably a cute, lovable animal, and then just stick it in a wacky situation and make it a kid's film, and adults should know better to just avoid it.
I think these are much more ripe for the plucking for, say, fan films that would be like, oh, that's kind of fun that some people spend a weekend or, 2 weeks making something 15 minutes long and kind of fun based off Peanuts.
Oh, even a 5-minute, film or whatever. That's just like one gag. That's a short film. You have I'd even watch it for better or worse, YouTube video than, but again, I don't think I want to see a Rex Morgan MD movie or a Kudzu film. So I don't know. Maybe I'll be eating my words next year when I'm talking about how much I loved the Heathcliff film.
And how it's going to win Cannes.
Can of tuna, maybe?
But I'm ching. Next story.
Another movie that's in development, adapting a non-conventional, I'd say, subject, is a fictional adaptation of the documentary "The Other F Word." Pat, are you familiar with this documentary?
I was not familiar with the documentary until I saw this news about a Friday or so. And interesting enough, I used to be a major fan of Blink-182 when I was in like junior high and high school, but I did not know that like Mark Hoppus was in this. So kind of interesting topic. I could see this film, especially because it has Jason Segel in it.
Well, the documentary is about former rock and rollers. I think it's supposed to be punk artists. As you said, Jason Segel is attached to be in it. And I actually think it's a pretty good concept for a situation comedy. Punk rocker who now is a dad. Having not seen the doc, and I don't know if I'll go see the doc. I don't know if it's out on DVD, I remember seeing the trailer a while ago.
Yeah, I looked for it online, but I think it's still... I don't even know if it got like a serious release other than screenings here and there. So they're probably trying to bleed it out for as much money as they can in little screenings around the corner in different cities.
Yeah, so it's not... I don't imagine Jason Segel's going to... I don't think there are a lot of details out about it yet, but I don't imagine Jason Segel's going to actually play Mark Hoppus or Johnny Everclear or what have you, but just take the concept of it. And at least they're doing it right by giving credit to the documentary for inspiring it. I imagine there have been many films inspired by documentaries where the makers of the documentary don't see a penny of it.
Yeah, just a little disclaimer at the end that says, characters in this are fictional, even if they appear to be based on someone.
Yes, exactly. Pat, I know you're not a big fan of based on true story films necessarily, but have you seen any...
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Well, that's what you said like a few weeks ago when we were building up to Argo, how you say based on a true story films are sometimes played out or you don't get as excited for them. But I know you're a fan of documentaries. Have you seen any that you think would make a good film or could be adapted into a narrative fiction documentary?
It's hard to say that because when you see them, most of the ones that win major awards actually, get turned into film movies. Like Gasland, Promised Land is kind of loosely based on Gasland. Obviously, Milk is based on the times of Harvey Milk. King of Kong, this is not a movie, but I just watched a Bones episode. Yes, I'm still watching that show. And there's a Bones episode that's based on the video game Punky Pong. It's called the Game in the Grease. The Gamer in the Grease. So there are those. I mean, obviously you could make a movie based off something similar to The Cove, which won an Oscar, and I think people would see that. You're much more the documentary man. I think before you went to grad school, you saw about every single documentary that you could get your hands on. Is there something out there that you would like to see?
It is funny that you mentioned King of Kong because for the longest time there was talk about doing a narrative film based on that. And I think that'd be completely pointless because it's one of the most entertaining documentaries out there. And I think...
Well, that's true, too, because, I mean, just look at Man on Wire. That movie, I was like, man, that's one of the most intense movies from the last 2 or 3 years. And it's a true story, and they reenact it almost fictionally in the film. So... if they tried to remake that, it would just be a shame that people didn't see the original.
Yes, exactly. Man on Wire is definitely a film that they should not... Even though the story seems so unbelievable that it would make a great narrative film, I'm just using narrative as a shorthand to say, quote-unquote real movie. I was thinking, the one time I can think of this that I actually liked it was the HBO movie of Grey Gardens, because it filled in a lot of the holes that the documentary, being verite, really couldn't show you the backstory and really tell the great dramatic arc of the Beals. But I was thinking, like, when you do that, you do have to incorporate the documentarians as characters in the film, and they did in Grey Gardens, because they are there and they are changing the people's lives just by filming them. And what I thought about would make a good narrative film would be the Paradise Lost story. Are you familiar with that series, Pat, or should I give I should give a primer anyway for the listeners.
I have heard of it, but I couldn't tell you what it's about.
3 wrongly accused children. They're teenagers who get accused for murdering children because they wore a lot of black and listened to heavy metal. And
so this is the West Memphis 3.
Yes,
basically.
the West Memphis 3 story. Being told over the course of 3 documentaries by Joe Berlinger. Peter Jackson produced one called West of Memphis that's coming out pretty soon. That you'd think there'd be enough told in 3 movies, but maybe it's taking that outsider approach, because the Berlinger and his crew did get involved, and their movie did inspire people to start a whole campaign to get the West Memphis 3 out. Gets a little shady in Paradise Lost, because they, like in the second one, they pretty much accuses one of the stepfathers of the dead child of being the murderer, but in the third one they accuse someone completely different. They just keep pointing fingers. So the fact that the film crew had such an impact on these people's lives, I think, is an interesting story, and a narrative film could tell that better than a documentary about the documentary. And also thinking about biopics that I would love to see done in a narrative fashion. I thought about The Kid Stays in the Picture and The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Those are 2 Oscar-worthy roles for whoever wants to take those on. But moving on to what we usually talk about, superheroes.
Well, basically, for those who are following the Marvel, dirge of information, Hugo Weaving was interviewed about possibly coming back as Red Skull in the last couple of weeks, and he basically said he's done with the character and hopes he doesn't have to do it again, because he didn't think that there's anything more to do, and he doesn't like to retread. Never mind the fact that he was in 3 Matrix movies, 2 of which are terrible. Actually, that's probably why he doesn't want to retread, because he doesn't want to turn into another Matrix situation. But also on top of that, Natalie Portman is supposedly, at least along a couple reports, forced back into the Thor franchise because she was initially upset over not getting the director she wanted for the Thor follow-up. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of lends itself to all these supporting actors who have been in, like, the Iron Man franchise. Terrence Howard obviously was probably the most public kick-out and black eye of a Marvel film. But what do you think is the story here with Marvel and the B-level story characters? And
don't forget one lead actor who had to back out between films, Ed Norton, who they recast because of he was apparently too difficult, or he wanted more of a say of his character. He got too involved or whatever. I think it probably boils down to if I remember, I think it's probably a different case for each person. But maybe Marvel is still, they're kind of new to this movie game. And maybe they're still trying to play things a little cheap, trying to get, because they rarely ever get A-list talent to begin with. They make stars more than they utilize stars, and then once
and the man that they that is pretty much responsible for all their success, as far as I'm concerned, Robert Downey Jr. was paid $500,000 for the first Iron Man. It's like nothing in movie world.
But that made his career, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are some difficult contract negotiations going forward with RDJ. But because Marvel seems to be cheap from what I hear, and that's what caused Terrence Howard to back out. Natalie Portman, I think, won an Oscar between shooting Thor and shooting the sequel, so that might be why she's being a little more difficult too. But it's hard to say without being a Hollywood insider. I can't say I blame Hugo Weaving, even though I really like him, and I liked him in Captain America, but he also has a difficult makeup thing, and a lot of actors don't like to go through that multiple times if they can help it.
Well, it's okay if he backs out based on the fact that he's going to wear a red mask for the rest of his run in any Marvel movie.
Yeah, that's true. They could recast him as easier than anyone else. But I did read that article where Hugo Weaving was talking, and he seemed like a professional about it. He said he would go back to work and he would give it his all because he's a professional. A lot of people are wondering if Natalie Portman's going to sleepwalk through her role in Thor 2, and I imagine she's more of a professional than people are giving her credit.
Yeah, and that would be just a very stupid move because obviously you'd be burning a bridge with Marvel, but you'd most likely be burning a bridge with Disney and Pixar on top of it.
Yeah, and those are hands you definitely do not want to bite as they feed you. That's a mixed metaphor, but we'll keep on moving on. One final story that's more in the... I don't know if we're going to become in the weird Nick Cage tracking business here on Filmcast Without a Cause, but I wanted to bring up this story that Nicolas Cage has been cast in the lead of a reboot for the Christian fantasy fiction series. Well, what would you call the Left Behind series? He's been cast in a reboot of Left Behind, a book series with Christian themes. I'm not too familiar with it.
It's basic. I picked it up because I thought it sounded interesting until somebody asked me what I was reading. One of my friends. Left Behind book series is a story about the rapture and the people who are left behind when the rapture and revelation come about, and the people who have to deal with their transgressions and battle off Satan as he takes over the planet. And the question here is if Nicolas Cage is in this, is he going to be playing the hero who, helps convert a bunch of people to Christianity and fight Satan, or will he play Satan?
Ooh, I hope he plays Satan. I didn't even think about that option. I just assumed he'd play, I know Kirk Cameron was in the direct-to-video Christian-financed version of these movies. I just assumed he'd play the Kirk Cameron role because he's the big movie star, but... I'm almost intrigued by Nick Cage playing Satan in a Rapture film.
I would say that it's to get the people who would go see this movie on the real big screen, the people who saw Fireproof and, the Passion of the Christ. I don't think they'd buy him as, the guy who's fighting for Christianity based off him as Ghost Rider. I mean, maybe they don't even know that, but he was basically a minion of the devil, pissing flame, and one of his most recent hits, if you can call it that.
Or any other film where he's laying down the F-bomb or, having promiscuous sex or whatever.
Well, maybe he'll just dust off his old shoes from the City of Angel days and pick up where that left off.
Maybe. Well, Pat, we've talked enough about movies that will come out or maybe will come out. Let's just move on to our main review of the week, which is Seven Psychopaths.
How's everything in the dog kidnapping business? Did you get a new dog?
Already struggling to work on his screenplay, Marty's psychopathic best friend drags him into the world of organized crime when he kidnaps a gangster's dog.
Where were you walking him, Charisse?
I always loved Bonnie like he was my own child.
1, I do not want that image in my head. 2, could you go get my dog back?
4 years ago, Irish playwright Martin McDonagh brought his taste for violence and disturbed characters to the silver screen with the dark comedy In Bruges. Leaving the world of tormented hitmen behind, McDonagh's sophomore effort, Seven Psychopaths, brings us vigilantes, mobsters, alcoholics, and, well, of course, psychopaths. Much of the violent and dark comedic beats found in Bruges appear, but this film seems to be much more of an introspective piece about McDonagh's creative world. The lead character, portrayed by Colin Farrell, is a screenwriter named Marty. As the film progresses, we're presented what at first feels like several disjointed vignettes of the title card Seven Psychopaths, but as the plot unfolds, we discover the story is more than a screenwriter and filmmaker struggling to find one cohesive story. Jacob, much could be made of the commenting on screenwriting and possible autobiographical nature of the film, but this method of story delivery is a tricky beast to wrangle. Do you feel that McDonagh tied all the loose ends together, or were there too many psychopaths to make the story work?
Well, if the question is whether I find the film to have a messy narrative, the answer is certainly yes, but I think it's for the best. I think that's one of the strengths of the film, actually, is how messy it is. It plays a lot with the differences of cinema and reality. The truth is, reality is messy, and no spoilers, there's even a mid-credits coda here that leads the film with a huge question mark about uncertainty of the future and the fear or lack of fear one can have about it. The fact that you even asked me that question, though, makes me wonder if you feel differently, perhaps?
Oh, at first I thought it was a little interesting about where we were going, and suddenly there was characters and stories that I didn't care for, but they tie them so neatly together as the story goes along that I almost felt like we were watching a play in some cases, where the stage will fade to black and one of the characters is telling the story in a spotlight with the rest of the stage playing out his narrated scene. But at first I was like, okay, I'm not so certain if this really works, because he tells the stories of psychopaths who aren't characters that you see right before you that you expect them to be, but people that he's putting in a movie. and that he's writing throughout the entire film. One of them becomes two of them actually become major story arcs and ride all the way to the end of the movie. And I was just wondering if, that's almost kind of the way it's presented, almost kind of a Tarantino style dodgeball thrown your way, or curveball, I should say. And I was just wondering if maybe you were having the same experience where you saw it happening and you weren't sure if that was how it went, but obviously you didn't have the same experience.
Well, I actually, when you phrase it like that, I think I did. I think for the first half hour or so, I was a little worried about the film because you mentioned Tarantino, and we talked even last week about films of the 90s. And so they've been on my mind a while. And for a while, I was worried that this was falling into the trap of 90s films, where it's just about low-level criminals, and it's filled with violence. It even had Tom Waits in it, who was a staple of a lot of 90s films, especially Jim Jarmusch. And it had this nonlinear structure, which felt very Tarantino-esque. But I think the film kind of folds into itself and almost becomes a commentary on that kind of filmmaking and the obsessions of that kind of filmmaking. And it becomes very meta, and it's actually a lot more melancholy and a lot deeper than a lot of those Tarantino knockoffs. And that's why I actually loved this film, because I'm a fan of those Tarantino movies and even some of those Tarantino knockoff films. But this film, I think, delivered a lot more emotional than some of those films did. So I really actually loved that about the movie.
The interesting thing about this film that I found that is one of my major criticisms of bad films is that they feel like a first draft. But I almost feel like he wrote this movie and then he went back and made comments on the movie he wrote. He didn't change it, but he just said, your only female characters in this film are there for nothing but plot devices. And he kind of just says at one point, he says, all your women are terrible. You don't know what you're doing with these women.
I could see that being lobbied as a criticism. Even if you draw attention to your film's flaws, did that make them any less flaws? In terms of this film, I think it does improve on it, and it makes you think a lot more about the movies you watch. You commented on how the short stories in this film felt like they are little vignettes in the film, but how they reminded you of the play. And I've only seen one of McDonagh's plays, and that was The Pillow Man, put on in a production by my talented brother, playwright Andrew Rosdale. And that is a play that also features a lot of these short stories and fables, usually delivered in monologue. And I think he has a real gift at writing these fables that because they could stand on their own very much as short stories. But part of me wonders if McDonagh just writes these films and plays as an outlet for these short stories. But these are a lot more cinematic than I think the ones in Pillow Man or the other ones I've kind of heard about.
Well, it's hard to take like a playwright or a screenwriter or director and weigh something completely on itself without talking about their past work. And obviously this is his second film, and being an accomplished playwright, you want to look at In Bruges and see the connections. I would actually say, while I enjoyed this film, that I don't think it's anywhere near as well crafted a story as In Bruges, because when the vignette shows up of what Colin Farrell did in that film as a hitman, taking a vacation from his terrible transgressions, it fits without any sort of bump in the viewing. Whereas both the things that involve a Vietnamese psychopath and a Quaker psychopath, that doesn't happen in Bruges. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do think they may stick out more as short stories where the In Bruges one fit into the narrative. But I think the Vietnamese one especially is turned into a really touching story by the end of the film. I debated whether I liked this film more than In Bruges. It should be added that Martin McDonagh actually has an Oscar for a short film he did called, I think, Six Shooter, which I haven't seen.
The Vietnamese thing at the end, I would feel that it was kind of in line with almost The 25th Hour, a Spike Lee movie, for those who haven't seen it, where in the end there's a kind of like a frayed end that you don't know exactly how they're going to tie it up, but they've kind of talked about it so much that they hit you with all this stuff. And it is, I would say that McDonagh handled it better than Lee did, but I don't know if I'm really a fan of that so much in the way that this played out and that character specifically. But this film is kind of similar to a movie that we talked about a couple weeks ago in Looper, wherein all the characters have their run as the person who you're like, this person is despicable, this person is super interesting. I want this guy to win, I want this guy not to win, and those are the type of films that I really enjoy. And obviously, McDonagh's got a real powerful idea of how to make that work in his stories, just based off the 2 movies I've seen of his. Do you have a favorite psychopath that you might be able to
oh man,
enlighten us?
I think I loved the Quaker psychopath, and I also think Woody Harrelson. I think he's technically one of the psychopaths. I think he gives a really cool performance, and unlike anything we've seen recently from him. But I'm going to go with the Quaker psychopath. How about you, Pat?
If I were to choose, I would probably go with Tom Waits' psychopath, just because I love the bunny, and I don't know about his story per se. And I thought that they were going to say that his connection was going to be to another psychopath in the film, just based off of their love interests. I don't want to give anything away, but his story seemed different and did not really have a vignette in the same style as the other ones.
I did want to say one thing quick before we wrap this up. One thing I really enjoyed about this film was the fact that you could not guess what was going to happen scene to scene unless they tell you what's going to happen, which they do at one point when they talk about going to the desert or whatnot. Coming after a summer where I think every single film that came out was either an adaptation or a prequel or a sequel, I think we've gotten a few original films this year, this being one of them. And I just wanted to applaud it for that, for being wholly original, in my opinion. I
completely agree. I mean, obviously it fits in a gangster mold, or maybe something like a horror well, you can't just say psychopath, but, a killer movie, but it's definitely its own work.
Well, Seven Psychopaths, I'm highly recommending it. It sounds like Pat is, maybe not as highly as me, but sounds pretty strongly. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say it's a good film. I wouldn't beat myself up if I hadn't seen it, but I mean, in the theater. So sometimes I weigh it on, should I see it in the theater or should I wait? And I'm on the edge of saying, yeah, go ahead and see it in the theater, but don't worry if you don't have the money to make it.
All right, it won't be for everyone. I will say that.
Oh, that's
it takes
for
a certain kind of twisted mind, and that speaks to the fact that Seven Psychopaths is rated R for strong violence, bloody images, pervasive language, sexuality, nudity, and some drug use. We didn't even get to Sam Rockwell in this film, or Colin Farrell. Very quickly, all the performances, did you think they were strong?
Yeah, as much as Sam Rockwell has been heralded for this film and saying he's the one that takes it away, I would say that Christopher Walken is the person in this film as far as his best work out of anyone I've seen in his movies.
It's good to see him actually acting, and he does that in this film, because he's become kind of a caricature. I do think this is one of those definitive Sam Rockwell roles. Sam Rockwell exists, I think, for this role. So I'm going to put that praise on him a little bit more, but I echo your Christopher Walken things exactly. Well, we'll be back in a bit after this break talking about what's new on DVD. And hey, we have another FWOAC Franchise Flashback coming up. We're going to talk Prometheus, the long distant past of 2012. All right, we'll be right back. New on DVD this week, stuff I definitely need to check out, starting with Magic Mike, a film I missed this summer. I definitely am going to rent that. I'm a big Steven Soderbergh fan. Pat, are you down for Magic Mike?
Certainly. And I think if you have a lady in your life, it's definitely something you can watch with them, and you can enjoy it on different levels.
Oh, I was hoping we could get together and watch it. But,
not going to happen. I'm secure, but I don't need to see it with any other dude.
Watching it with our respective wives is just as good. Savages is also coming out this Tuesday. A film I saw, was mildly disappointed with, but if you're an Oliver Stone fan, I recommend it, especially if you have a nice TV. That's going to be a good-looking Blu-ray for sure.
Maybe this is a long discussion for another time, but is there a Oliver Stone film that is like, this is the film you have to see and has set up his career to be revered for so many years?
Platoon, maybe?
Yeah, talk about 30 years ago.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I can go really hot and cold on Oliver Stone. That's a good conversation. I don't know if I want to subject myself through his filmography to figure out the secret to Oliver Stone, but I think he has some gems. They're maybe not classics like a lot of people say, but I like JFK for sure.
Well, I'll just say that obviously I am not going to be running to the Red Box to be picking up the Savages this week.
Maybe you will rent Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, the new Steve Carell comedy?
No, I definitely will. I think this sounds like a fun premise.
Also coming out, Take This Waltz, the newest film by Sarah Polley, starring Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen. And The Invisible War, a documentary that I'm not going to recommend people rent because I think it's going to be on Independent Lens coming up soon, so check your local listings, and you can see it for free on your local public television station. But I know we both are interested in it anyway. Pat, watch anything? I know you were still on this betterq.com kick. Care to give us an update?
Yeah, certainly. I don't know what it is, but occasionally, I'll have a free lunch and some time, and I'll set a movie while I'm rendering things on Netflix. And I've actually found 3 films. One that I almost saw years ago when I lived in San Francisco at a film festival. I can't remember exactly which one. But Shotgun Stories from the same director as, help me out.
Take Shelter. Jeff Nichols.
The same director as Take Shelter, and it lives up to the billing that everyone gives it. It is definitely similar in style with slow burn, small town politics, if you could call it politics. But very interesting story. The other films I watched, Mad Bastards. This is a Australian independent film. I don't know if it's independent or a full scale release in Australia. I'm not very hip to the Australian cinema scene. But very interesting story about a kid who's a hooligan and his father who's of the same, bloodline, obviously. And they're both dealing with their demons, and kind of interesting. I'd say seek it out. But betterq.com is not letting me down, except for maybe this film here about a gentleman who goes to Armenia to make maps. It's just far too long, too slow. Not the type of slow burn I enjoy. Jacob, what are your recommendations this week?
Well, I want to say this will interest probably no one, but I need to say it anyway. Shotgun Stories, directed by Jeff Nichols, who went to the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, where I currently live. And the guy who shot it, I don't know the name of the DP of Shotgun Stories, but he went to Wake Forest. So that's some local pride here. I really need to see Shotgun Stories, though. I feel really shamed, but I know those facts about it. Talking about what I watched this week, some friends and I decided to have our own kind of franchise flashback, and we watched a little mini franchise flashback. Our goal was to watch all the films in the Halloween series before Halloween. That's probably not going to happen, but we did watch Halloween and Halloween 2 in a double feature. My wife even joined us for the original Halloween, which she hadn't seen, and that's still a great film. Halloween 2 is never as good, but it's also fun to watch. So
I've never seen any of those films. So you're saying I should watch those right away?
If I would say that we should make it our next franchise flashback, but by the time we would be in December and still watching Halloween movies, and that would just be weird. We need to get a better head jump on it, but who knows? Maybe in the future I will subject you to John Carpenter's Halloween.
Sounds good.
But speaking of franchise flashback, let's wrap up our current one of the Alien franchise with this summer's Prometheus.
Prometheus has landed.
These are ancient civilizations that were separated by centuries, and yet this same pictogram was discovered in every one of them.
They're smiling.
I think they want us to come and find them.
Set nearly 30 years before the events in the original Alien, Prometheus follows a team of scientists as they search for the origins of human existence. They don't like what they find. That's the trailer noise.
Big things have small beginnings.
Time to let viewers in on some of the secret origins of Filmcast Without a Cause. Prometheus came out this past summer before we had started this podcast, and it's safe to say the two of us were eagerly awaiting its arrival. When it came out, I remember you and I both saw it as soon as we could in different parts of the country, and we were texting back and forth our thoughts, accolades, and nitpicks of the film. Fast forward a few months, and Prometheus has arrived on home video. We now have a podcast where we've rewatched the entire Alien franchise from beginning to end, and we now have an outlet to bore our audience with Prometheus blather. And usually we're a little spoiler heavy here with the FWOAC Franchise Flashback, because the films are a little bit older, and we probably will be spoiling things here, so if you haven't seen Prometheus yet, fast forward until you start hearing some music, and join us for the end of the show when we wrap things up. But back to it, Pat. Remind us of where you were way back in May of 2012.
Oh, the days of yore. Basically, this film was probably the the highly anticipated film of the year for me because of how highly I regard Alien. It's one of my favorites. And as we've gone through this FWOAC flashback, franchise flashback, people have probably realized that I don't revere the sequels nearly as much. So I wanted to know where Ridley Scott was going to go with what I consider his best film, in Alien. And I mean, I'll save my thoughts, but I'll say that this is one of the first films where I saw the trailer and I just stopped looking at everything that had anything to do with it because I wanted to go in completely, almost completely blind. In fact, I walked out of the trailers for Avengers because I knew there was going to be a Prometheus trailer and there was going to be a Dark Knight trailer. And I didn't want to see either because I just really needed to keep my brain pure for this film. Jacob, were you anywhere near as ridiculous as I was back in the spring?
It was probably my most anticipated film of the summer as well, but I was not able to avoid those trailers. It was pretty much this film that inspired me to start closing my eyes to trailers and not watching them over and over again online, because I do think a lot of the money shots were given up in the trailer and beer commercials for Prometheus. But I was definitely looking forward to this film, and I'll just get into people who don't know. I loved it back in May, and I certainly saw where people had their nitpicks, but mainly I was won over by the ambition of it, and I had a lot of nerdy issues with it, but I'll save some of those for later, and just ask you first, was it better or worse than you remembered it on this rewatch on home video?
It's really hard to answer because saying worse seems like such a hard word, but obviously the problem is there's so much in this film that makes so... this is hard to say too, but some parts just make so little sense. There's a great deal of hubris in this film and look the other way, plot choices and scientific mumbo jumbo. The manner in which the space pioneers conduct themselves is that sometimes completely unbelievable. However, the action and the pacing and the delivery and some of the just the concept that make you think, it moves beyond that. The secret of the alien moon, the treasures it's almost so enjoyably unsettling and produced so well that you're willing to just turn a blind eye almost to the things that we and everybody has nitpicked. Did you believe it's worse than you initially thought? Because you said you loved it.
It was a different experience rewatching it. I don't know if I can say it better or worse because it loses the element of surprise that it totally won me over in the theater. Because I did think it was really taking some brave decisions as it went on. But I spent a lot of time watching it though, being hung up on how it fit directly to Alien. And that time on a rewatch, knowing where the film ends, I didn't have that fixation. But I did feel it held up pretty well, actually. I do miss the 3D, which is a weird thing to say, but it was one of the few films I was really impressed by the 3D in. And watching it at home, even though I have a big TV, not 3D, I missed some of the clever uses of it in that film. But I'll just move into the best part, and then I'll let you have your turn. And this is my favorite part of Prometheus. Is something that's actually been criticized. I've read in some reviews of the film, and it's not something I would say or expect myself to say typically, is that I love the score of Prometheus. And
very, very good.
I've heard people say it's overscored before, but I just love the main theme. I feel, I think I joked when it came out that all movies should sound like the main theme in Prometheus. I just find it transcendent. It reminds me why I love going to the movies. I should say the score is by Mark Streitenfeld, who's done a lot of Ridley Scott's thing, but I think the main theme is done by Henry Gregson Williams. Reminds me a lot of the Jerry Goldsmith's Star Trek stuff. And I'm not typically a big score guy, but I've listened to the Prometheus soundtrack probably more than I've listened to any other music CD this year. Pat, what are you going to say is the best part of Prometheus?
Oh, I think a lot of these prequels have a problem where they expand the universe, but really just kind of ruin all the mythology and or the wonder of it. And I feel that this actually adds, obviously, very laterally to the lore of these films and what people wanted to know, without completely cutting off the ties of everything. There's engineers in this film that might have started. That's obviously built the xenomorphs, if that's what you're seeing in this movie. But it kind of does something in prequels that you don't really see, that it kind of pays respects to the fact that you don't need to tell people about metachlorians.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to know that garbage. And beyond that, obviously, I think the best part is just like the villain, or I don't even know if he's a villain, the most even keel person in the film, which you don't normally see in this, and that truly a psychopathic robot or android in David, and his discussion of theme and life and existence and creation, where he asks I can't remember the scientist's name. He said, why did you make me? He said, because we could. And, that whole thing kind of plays out. Why did the aliens make them? And it's a very small, almost throwaway line, but that character it almost feels like they're following him the whole time. You don't need anybody else as a main character.
I specifically didn't pick David as my favorite part because I knew you would touch on it. So I thank you for doing that. Why don't you just go ahead and tell us? I know you're itching to get to it. Maybe the weakest parts of Prometheus.
While it is ambitious, we talked about, there is some very the things that are almost heavy-handed developments and things that are unnecessary. And I think this might be Damon Lindelof is the writer of this film, correct?
Damon Lindelof rewrote it after an initial script by John Spates, who the commentary of which I'm halfway through on the Blu-ray.
Well, is part of the reason that people have issue with Lost, either fans or non-fans. I don't watch it. I just like to give you grief.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I think I've seen one episode, but I didn't watch it. But either way, is that they seem to throw in a lot of things that never get answered. And in this film, it seems like they threw in a lot of things that were stunning reveals, Mrs. Vickers' relationship with Wyland, just if we're going to go spoiler here, Wyland still being alive, the I can't create life part, and all these things that are just over the top. I'm not talking about the nitpicks. I mean, there's things to talk about with like the treating of science and evolution and the side characters, ethos and pathos and things like that. But there seems to be a lot in this movie that didn't need to be there.
Yeah, you are right in saying that a big criticism of Lost, and I think a lot of people are redirecting anger at Lost to Prometheus, and it probably deserves a lot of it too, is the fact that answers are usually not given or just clues or speculation is given. But that's part of the reason I love Lost and love Prometheus, is that all the answers aren't given and you can think and speculate. But that's not exactly what you're talking about here. You're talking about some of the wackier out of left field twists too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you are going to go a different way?
As far as weakest parts, I had little nerd nitpicks about the life cycle and how it was established in previous films and how this film sort of contradicted those by introducing this ooze. But I've come to terms with it. The ooze is mysterious. I'm okay with the ooze. I guess if I'm going to have to say, but now that I've said that, I have to say what an actual weak part is. I do think the two characters that get trapped in the cave are a little stupid.
To put it mildly.
Listening, I mentioned I'm listening to the commentary. I'm only halfway through it. Apparently, there was a scene written that was played for humor where, despite all their math or all their science and technology and mapping equipment, they played it for laughs that they got lost in the cave and or in the pyramid. And I think that may have actually helped because otherwise they just seem really incompetent. At least if I could have laughed at it, it would have been forgivable. But I think a lot of the characters in this film, I remember speaking back at when we talked about Alien, how I appreciated that all the characters weren't just given really generic quirks so we could associate them from another. I do think Prometheus kind of falls in that trap where we're given one thing for each character that we can hang our hat on. Like, these two have a bet about terraforming. That's all we know about those characters. So I think but there are a lot of characters, and you have to give them something, I guess. Now I'm getting apologetic, but I guess if I had to say what was weak, I think some of the character work, maybe. The next question we've been doing on the FWOAC Franchise Flashback is there anything that resonated with you this viewing that you didn't notice on previous viewing? So I guess anything from this summer that you've grown to appreciate more or not?
Well, after watching all the other films, especially Alien, because I almost feel that this film kind of says that everything past Alien almost didn't happen, with some of the things that it takes liberties with the creation of the aliens and the ooze that they come out of. Otherwise, it doesn't make much sense. Either way, I kind of feel like maybe I'm giving too much credit, and other people are giving too much credit to Ridley Scott for this film, because some of the things that happen in here, like the way that they research science and just the overload of information, none of that happened really, for the most part, in Alien, which is really just a horror film set in space. And there's not as much, grand thought or ambitious, philosophical discussions to be had about creation and evolution and existence. And the nitpicks almost make me wonder if that is truly more of Ridley Scott's contribution, is I want to have this in the film, or I want to have that in the film, not so much playing it low and slow like that movie does.
is interesting that you're talking about the more horrific elements, because that's actually what I responded to more this viewing, that I looked at it less like a sci-fi film and more like a horror film like the others. Then the character, the poor decisions the characters make a lot more sense in the context of a horror film, because characters in horror films almost always make really poor decisions. And even when you're thinking about the more philosophical stuff, there's nothing scarier than thinking that the people who created you did so just because they could, and then abandoned you and then wanted to destroy you. That's pretty scary stuff.
Well, the thing about that whole discussion about, I thought he answered that wrong. We did it because we could. I think most people create things or purchase things because it serves their needs, almost like slavery. Like I built a computer to do math for me. I built a robot to, clean up my house so I don't have to. I built this android so he can fly me through space while I sleep. And obviously these engineers built the humans to be smaller versions of them to do work for them because maybe they don't trust robots. But based on their spaceship design, I'd say that's probably exactly why they did it. Moving down the questions, our next is, did the film prequel in this situation, add to the story or mythology? In your opinion, I already said that I feel it does.
Oh, yeah, of course. I think this is the first one. I mean, out of all of the sequels or prequels, this does the most to expand the world. And I think that's one of the things I really liked about it, is that it really took chances. By giving us new creatures and not just listening to I'm going to stop talking about the commentaries, I swear. But it seems like John Spates' draft, the original draft, was they ran into the facehuggers right away. They got infested. A lot of the characters were the same, but the aliens were there. I think it was much braver to do what they did with the xenobiology and the bigger questions that they did. So definitely, I think it added to the mythology for sure.
Absolutely, and it does take a lot more risk. Almost all the films, I'd say all 4 films, are just someone stuck in a geographic location and aliens are ripping them apart. Mm-hmm. And in this movie, for the most part, there are no aliens.
Do you think there needs to be a sequel to Prometheus, or do you think it stands alone as its own film?
That's an interesting way to put it. Does there need to be a sequel? I mean, there's obviously going to be.
Well, apparently it's not a sure thing. The development has started, but it didn't make a ton of money in the theaters. They're waiting to see how these Blu-ray sales go, from what I've read. So if the story ends here, will you be disappointed, or do you think it still kind of works as its own film?
I think it works, but I would like to watch the characters move on. It sets up a different way than they could. It doesn't have to be anything to do with aliens in the next movie.
Yeah, and I definitely want to see a sequel, but if this is where it is, it's an interesting coda to the Alien series.
Well, obviously, then our last question, ranking it against the franchise, it almost isn't part of the franchise.
No.
In a manner of thinking. Do you put it somewhere? Do you think it's 1 through 5 somewhere in the best?
If I had to, it's so tough. I don't know if I want to put it number 2 or number 3. I think I'm going to put it number 3. Below Aliens slightly, just because of the sentimental feelings I have towards Aliens. I know we're supposed to take those out of the equation, but I just...
No, you never can. Come on.
Okay. I just can't... I think it's really close between those two. I still say Alien is still better. You?
Alien is still my favorite by far. Mm-hmm. But this is number 2, but it's just barely edging out Aliens, just because there are so many nits to pick. There are so many dumb decisions in this film, and just it seemed like almost no research was done towards what scientists do in this movie. Like, she's a scientist, but she thinks she can restart a brain somehow. I don't get it. Well, sorry to say, I know we're not nitpicking. This is not the nitpick podcast.
Well, I'm glad we finally got the chance to talk about Prometheus on Filmcast Without a Cause. Prometheus is rated R for sci-fi violence, including some intense images and language, and it's on Blu-ray, DVD, and on demand. I actually highly recommend the Blu-ray. I've been listening to the commentaries. The deleted scenes, Pat, I know you rented it from your video store. Did it have the deleted scenes in there?
No, it had nothing on it.
There are some interesting deleted scenes. I don't know if there will ever be a director's cut, because if they cut out these scenes, I guess maybe he can always go back and add them in. But not to give away too much, but there is a character who comes back, and he's kind of deformed, right?
Yes.
I guess they did a whole version of it where that character was rendered in CGI to look like a completely different beast, and that's included on the DVD. So it's so that struck me as so odd, because I think he looks cooler as a mutated beast that actually looks like something as part of the alien world. But the description gave on the Blu-ray was that Ridley wanted to keep it more grounded, so he left him as this weird, looks like the villain in Green Lantern a little bit. I don't know. That's just a tease. I recommend checking out the Blu-ray. We're going to play some music. Hopefully the people who skipped out on the spoilers will join us, and we're going to wrap up the rest of the show.
Sounds good.
What is coming up in theaters this next week, October 26th? Chasing Mavericks, the cool surfer-looking movie that doesn't look all that cool. Cloud Atlas, the film I've been jonesing for a long, long time. Epic sci-fi, cross times, cross genders, big epic Wachowski film. Fun Size, a new Halloween comedy starring Victoria Justice. And Silent Hill Revelation. I actually did see the first Silent Hill in the theaters. Pat, did you ever see Silent Hill?
No. Is this a video game movie?
It is a video game movie, and it's not a particularly good one. I doubt the sequel will be good at all. But we will be reviewing, say it for me, Pat.
Cloud Atlas.
Huzzah! Quick programming note. There's some personal life things on my end that may either keep me from seeing Cloud Atlas right away or make the show be delayed, but hopefully you won't see any disruption in your podcasting service. But if you're OCD and this has become part of your routine, you need to listen to Filmcast Without a Cause every Thursday morning, or when do these drop? Wednesday morning?
Yes, but who knows when people listen. I assume people are listening during dinner time.
Yes.
Everyone just quiets down. They enjoy some FWOAC and eat their spaghetti.
But if it's become a part of your routine, just be aware that over the next couple weeks there may be minor disruptions. We'll try and make them as minor as possible. And
if we have to bring a microphone into the operating room while Jacob gets his surgery, that's what we'll do.
Yeah. No, he is joking, everyone. Pat, I wanted to congratulate you. I don't know if this is really worth congratulating, but I saw that you had a Facebook back and forth with internet celebrity Josh Larson over Argo.
Yes, I saw it probably the same day he did, and maybe not. He maybe saw an advanced screening, but I just could not understand where he was going with it. For those who don't know, Josh Larson is a co-host on Film Spotting, major film podcast that we're both fans of.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that he took his opinion where he took it. And then, of course, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to bow out and let his co-host, Adam Kempenaar, take him to task, and luckily he did, and he almost got much more upset with him than I did. So it all worked out in the end.
I look forward to listening to that episode. They didn't drop your name or anything in the podcast, did they?
No, I wrote an email after the show thanking Adam, so maybe they'll say something the week after.
Oh, huzzah! Did you mention our podcast?
Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
I doubt it. You have to give money for them to mention your podcast. But speaking of money, tell people where they can visit us and give us. Well, we don't need your money, listener. I kid. But
hey, if you're feeling generous,
yeah,
you could always make a donation. It's up there on our page, just to keep Jacob and I, going to the films. We're both students in grad school for different means, but filmcastwithoutacause.com is where you can download this podcast. You can leave comments on there, read our insightful thoughts. Jacob just, he teased it last week, but he put a post up about the bridge and ethics relating to documentary making. You've actually talked about this before on the show, right?
Yeah, a couple of times, just because for some reason ethics and documentary are on my mind lately.
Well, if you want to know more about it, you can go to the website Filmcast Without a Cause and check out that blog post. Also, you can get in contact with us through email, filmcastwoac@gmail.com, or tweet at us at filmcastwoac, and of course, tweets are on Twitter.
Great. Well, I want to thank you again, Pat, for joining me and recording this podcast.
Hey, it's what I do every week, Monday night. We'll let some people know. We record early.
Monday nights, yes. And thank you, listener, for listening.
That's a wrap.
I'm finished.